Hey, 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 happy Monday, y'all, and welcome to another Monday Night Live. My name is Nicole Roberts Jones, and I am known as the Bankroll Your Brains expert. And what I do is I help high performing women of faith create multiple streams of income from your God given brilliance. So, listen. On Monday nights, I join you to align biblical principles with your entrepreneurial journey. I'm always excited to pour into you, so, this episode is part four in a series I started 4 weeks ago called God Wants You to Profit. Now, before I start going in, those of you that are always here with me, you know what I'm getting ready to ask you to do. Number one, say hello. As my grandmother would say, don't walk in his house and not speak. And yes, you're not in my physical house, but this is my virtual studio. So at least say, hey, girl, hey, tell me where you're from. If as I share, what I share resonates with you, I want to know. I'm looking at the comments as I talk. If you have questions, thoughts, I want to know all of it. So if I'm resonating with you, give me some hearts. If I'm stepping on your toes, give me some fire emojis. But listen, I want to hear from you in the comments. All right. Now, last thing I'm going to ask you to do is if any of this is valuable to you, hey, Lakeland community in Florida, tell me your name because it just says Lakeland community, right? So listen, if any of what I share resonates with you, I want to ask you to share. I'm asking you to share it not because I'm trying to grow my following, but what I am trying to do is be obedient to my calling and to get this information out to all those that are in a place where they know, like they know, that they feel this urging in their spirit and their soul to start or grow their business. And they need the tools to get in alignment and do it the way that God ordained for them. Oh, you're going to know more about what I mean by that as I talk tonight. Cursula. All right, thank you. Hopefully, I'm saying your name right. So I see more people are here, so y'all say hello. So listen, I'm going to do a quick review, but if you've missed any of the episodes, the way I teach you guys, everything I teach, one builds on the next. So I'm going to always encourage you to go back and watch episode one, two, and three. I'm going to do a quick review, not a lot. And I'm not going to actually do a review at the top. I'm going to do a review from part three, which was last episode, right? But if you want to go back and watch them, which I encourage you to do, you can always go back to my YouTube channel and you see it there on the screen. NRJnetwork.com is where you go and do that. All right. So, with that said, let's get this party started with part four. So, listen, as we talked last time in part three, the base of profitability, I want you to understand this. And I want to just give you a quick, not a review, but give you a little more that came to me after I shared last week. And it'll really help you as we start to grow in our conversation in part four. Okay. Now, listen, when we look at the base, what popped in my spirit over the last week is you guys remember the movie Gremlins? You see it there on the screen. It's so funny. When I went to go look up a picture of the movie, it's interesting. It says, what you see isn't always what you get. And as we talked about that base, I wonder if you realize, just like in the movie Gremlins, now, y'all, you remember if you watered them, they would grow. And if you feed them, they would get evil. Okay. Now, here's what I want you to get as we're looking and expanding on last week's conversation. What are you feeding your mindset? What are you feeding yourself that's keeping you in a place of serving a small God or serving an abundantly above all God? Because that's limiting your ability to go after profit. Reminder from episode number one, profit. The word profit means to gain. So God is looking for you to gain for Him. It's bigger than money, y'all. Yeah, God wants you to make money because you need your money to eat and live and have your being, but it's so much bigger than that. And many of us are limiting God's ability to bless us because we're not going past what we can see. And just like a gremlin, because they were really, really cute, what you see is not always what you got. So here's what I want you to get. A great example of this were the children of Israel, right? It took them 40 years to make an 11-day trip. And by the way, I'm not gonna have slides the entire time, but you guys liked the slides so much last episode, it made me feel obligated to do a couple slides this time, right? Why do you think it took them 40 years to make an 11-day trip? Listen, their delay was due to their inability to let go of Egypt. They were feeding who they used to be instead of focusing on who they were going to be. You guys hear me say this all the time. It's not about who you already are, it's about who you have not yet become. And Israel was so focused on Egypt, and maybe we need to go back, and maybe I should go back to Egypt, and oh, this isn't working, so we got to go back to Egypt, instead of focusing on what is the lesson here and how do we matriculate into the next. Bible verse here, Philippians 3:13 through 14. Brethren or sisters, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead, I press toward the goal for the prize. Hey, C. Marie, she says, lack of faith and trust of the unknown. And here's the thing I want you guys to get: your faith doesn't get activated in, listen, the definition of faith. Hebrews 11:1. I don't have this on the slide, so let me come off sides. Hebrews 11:1 says, faith is a substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. How do you have faith if you can see it? So I need you guys to get this. When God is taking you to an abundantly above all place, if it's bigger than you can ask or think, then you can't fathom how to do it. It seems impossible to man, but what's impossible to man is possible with God. That's a Bible verse too. And so I really need you to get from our conversation last time, because I'm building off of that. How do you begin to dissipate the lies that keep you looking at Egypt when God has a promised land before you? And sometimes it'll look like you're failing. And ask Noah, because listen, I'm sure everybody laughed at Noah until it started to rain. Oh, you built an ark because it's going to rain. Okay. All right. No trace of rain in the sky. So, as we look at this and continue that conversation, I want to move into our conversation for this episode, which is source versus resource. Okay. And I want you to get this. I really, really want you to get this, right? Oh, let me say one other thing about the children of Israel. Another, this is, listen, I think I have about 3 or 4 Bible verses that I say all the time. This is one of them. And do not be conformed, to form at what the world says. See, what the children of Israel were doing, they were busy focused on what, it was okay in Egypt. We were living okay. It wasn't that bad. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. If God is doing a new thing, it's not going to look like the old thing. If God is stretching you and expanding your territory, it's bigger than where you already are. So listen, in our first episode, I talked about God created you to finish it. If God created you to finish certain work, that's his perfect will. And just like the children of Israel, God's will for them was the promised land. So, what kept them stuck? This is the conversation today: source versus resource. So let me define source for you, so you understand where I'm going, right? So source means, and I got this from both Webster and dictionary.com, a point of origin or procurement, a generative force, a place or person for which you can obtain something useful or valuable, a supplier of something. Y'all getting this? Resource is a source of the supply. It's something that can be used to perform some function. So let me give you an example of what this would look like. Okay. So let's look at a house for an example. If you want water to come through the pipes of your house, which is the resource, then the source from the water is the well. But if I want to break it all the way down, where's the water in the well come from? Hello, the creator of the water that comes into the well, that goes into the pipe that comes into your house. Come on, somebody. The thing that's interesting is when I was writing down my notes, what I was reminded of as I was writing my notes about this is I redid the house I grew up in a couple years ago. And one of the problems we kept having, and we rented it out for a while before we sold it, and the tenants kept having clogged up pipes, and I didn't understand why. And we'd send a plumber out, he'd go in and say there's nothing wrong, and yet the toilet wouldn't flush or things would back up into the tub. And listen, we gutted the entire house out. The piping was new, everything was new. My allergies are acting up right now. And and yet every time we sent the plumber out, it wasn't working. Do you know why? We found that there was a tree in the piping that was in the middle of the street that was coming from the source. And that tree was blocking the resource from coming into the house. Many of you do not realize that you're blocking your source from giving you the resources you need, you want, you desire. That's the conversation I'm going to have for you tonight. Now, listen, before I start to break that down, let me give you a couple of Bible verses. Y'all know me, I got to give you some Bible verses, right? And of him and through him and to him are all things, to whom be glory forever. This is talking about God. For of him and through him and to him are all things. Now, that's the New King James Version. I looked it up in the New Living Translation, and here's what this one said. For everything comes from him and exists by his power and is intended for his glory. Y'all are quiet in the comments, so this is getting good. Y'all are taking notes or something, but y'all are quiet in the comments. So what I want you to understand is God owns everything. And we forget about that. We forget about that God. Listen, I'm clear that God is the CEO of my business, that I'm just a conduit. I'm an employee, right? And so God really wants us to understand this. And as we look at source versus resource, let me give you a couple other Bible verses and I'm gonna walk you through 3 steps. But I need you guys to get this before I walk you through the 3 steps, because this is that tree that's in the line of your resource coming to you from the source. Are y'all getting this? And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers as it is this day. So, what is the covenant that God swore to you? Mhm. I want you to think about that for a minute. What is the covenant that God swore to you? Many of us think, oh, that's an Old Testament conversation, but it's not. God makes a covenant with each of us at birth. This is getting deep now because that's not even in my notes, right? So as we begin to look at this, and I'm going to walk you through the 3 steps, and I'm trying to get my notes together, y'all, because I get excited and I forget to move my papers and all that stuff, right? I want you to understand that there are 3 things you got to focus on if you're going to focus on God as your resource. As your source. 3 things. It should say source, not resource, because God is a source, not the resource. I wrote that backwards. This is me trying to make slides quickly, y'all. So that should say source, not resource, because God is a source of the resource. Okay. But the steps are going to be right. So, step number 1, realize God wants to partner with you to perform it. Oof. I really need you to get this. So, listen, this is what I mean. That again, that Bible verse I read a minute ago, let me put it back up real quick. Okay. Got to go back a couple slides. And remember, the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get wealth, that he make establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers as it is this day. So listen, what's that covenant? Go read Genesis 12:1, where he promised Abraham, I'm going to make your name great. And he promised all the things that we should have as daughters and sons, for the men that are watching, of Abraham. We all are his descendants. Y'all getting this? So when you were born, God created you with intention. He gifted you with certain things. So you have a natural propensity for some certain things. You are naturally love certain things. There are certain things that you are not good at, which was God's intention as well. That's because God made you with a certain purpose to fulfill. And if you've been around me, you know I talk about purpose all the time. Just like if I worked at Apple, come on, somebody, and I was making my iPhone, hello, the battery in this iPhone has a certain purpose to fulfill. Even my cover for this iPhone, every app on this iPhone. Do I need to keep going, y'all? So God knew the exact way he wanted to use you. And it reminds me of a little story of Jeremiah in the Bible. I don't have this on the slide. Jeremiah 1:4-5 that says, the word of the Lord came to me. This is Jeremiah talking, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. God set each of us apart to do work, and God wants to partner with you. Listen, go look at Genesis, the first chapter or second chapter, actually. Well, between the first and second, when he created Adam and Eve, it talks about, and I think this is in Genesis 2:18 or 8, somewhere around there, because I didn't write this down, that God created man, gave him the garden that he created, and he gave man the authority to tend to it and keep it. In the same way, God has given you an arena to tend to and keep. God was intentional when he made you. That's why he crafted and created you the way he did. So the question is, are you in alignment with God's intention? God wants to partner with you, but are you his partner? The second thing you got to realize is you've got to move with intention. So you know that realize that God wants to partner with you, but you've got to move with intention. Let me tell y'all something. And I was having this conversation with a group of my clients on our coaching call last week. In the 30 years that I've been doing this work, the number of entrepreneurs that I meet that do not move with intention, but they think they do. And you can have a PhD, you could have a big corporate job and have started a business. You could have a large following in social media and still not be moving with great intention. What do I mean by that? I see so many people that have a watered down brand because they're trying to be everything to everybody, which means you're nothing to nobody. You're not clear. And so what happens is, I hope I have this on the slide. I do. So listen, what happens is you're not positioning yourself. So when you say things like, I'm a health coach or I'm a business coach, and you're just general, that's not positioning yourself. Listen, a confused mind doesn't buy. So when you put yourself in a general kind of place, what you end up doing is creating yourself as a Walmart when God created you to be Nordstrom. Come on, somebody. You're going to get that later. Some of y'all ain't going to get that later. Walmart, anything can come in Walmart, any old thing. Any and everything could be in Walmart. I need y'all to get this. God did not create you to be Walmart. Coming off the slide for a minute. Let me say it again. Many of you are watering down the brand called you. And you're so focused on resource that you're not focused on the intention the source gave you. So because you're so focused on making money, you serve anybody and everybody. That's not how God created you, which means that you have a Walmart mentality. Come on, somebody. When God created you to be Nordstrom, or you can say Neiman Marcus, or you can go on and say any favorite phenomenal store, right? So I need you to get this. Yes, C. Marie says, knowing who you are created by Yahweh will give you direct intention. It will, but here's the thing I need y'all to get is you can know why you're created, but then you might still have a blurred vision. So what I mean by that is think about Walmart versus Nordstrom. Walmart, pretty much any and everything, especially in Super Walmart, is in Walmart. Nordstrom, only exclusive designers, exclusive things. They are very intentional about what gets put into Nordstrom. Any and everything cannot be in Nordstrom. You cannot buy a grocery in Nordstrom. You can buy a grocery in Walmart. You can go buy designer something all the way to a 50-cent something in Walmart. So what I've seen so many entrepreneurs do is they water down their brand because they're not intentional. Think about what intense means. It's intense. It's laser-like focus. So if I'm trying to be everything to everybody, that means I don't have a laser-like focus. That means that I'm spreading myself too thin. You don't want to go too wide. You want to go deep in one place. And because of that, I see so many people, right, that do what they see other people doing. If that's not in alignment with the brand called you, why are you doing it? But you've got to get clear and intentional on why and how God crafted and created you. You've got to be clear. And when you're not clear, then you're Walmart. hmm Whew. And again, I see so many people do this. You're so focused on, oh, well, I got to make money in my business. And yes, of course, the CEO, yes, you've got to generate revenue. I'm not saying that you can't focus on generating revenue, but when you're so like in hustle mode, by the way, if you look up hustle in a dictionary as pimp or prostitute, that's why you'll never hear me call any business you start a side hustle. God never wants to pimp your gift. But many of you are in hustle mentality. So you have a Walmart kind of brand instead of being the Nordstrom that God created you to be. Or whatever favorite store, Lord and Taylor. Well, Lord and Taylor's gone. So let me not say that with Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue. I would say I'm Saks Fifth Avenue. That's the store I would say I am. Because I'm clear and I'm exclusive. Not because I'm trying to leave people out. I'm not. But what you know is who you are made to serve. I'm not meant to serve everybody like Walmart is. Y'all getting my point? So you've got to move forward in intention. Now listen, Ephesians 3:20, another of my favorite Bible verses. Now to him who's able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us. According to the power that works in us. I'm trying to see if I had this on the slide. I don't. That power is an intense focus. That's an intention. I can't be powerful if I'm trying to do 20 things at the same time. If I'm clear focused and I'm laser focused, that's that intense power that God wants for us to have. Y'all with me? So if you're going to be intense, you've got to have two things. You've got to have commitment and strategy. Now, I'm gonna talk strategy next week, so I'm gonna focus on commitment here. I do have one more step for you, but I need to say this, right? Ken Blanchard, he's a management expert, said this about committed versus interested. Because many of you focus on interest. That's Walmart, by the way. Committed is this: when you're interested in something, you do it only when it's convenient. Come on, children of Israel. When you're committed to something, you accept no excuses, only results. You have this no matter what mentality. I'm not giving up. I'm going forward. I'm clear. I'm intentional. This is the difference between comfort and conviction. Comfort is this is getting too hard. I'm out. Conviction is this is what I know I'm called to do. I'm gonna do whatever it takes. But you've got to be clear on what that whatever it takes, that strategy. And again, I'll talk strategy next week. But I need you to get the commitment piece because God so loved the world that he gave first. Now he's looking for what you're going to do with what he gave you. And I'll talk to you about this in another episode. So again, if you guys missed any of the episodes, go back and watch them. I need you to understand your intention will make the difference between you being Walmart or Nordstrom. Come on, somebody. Here's another Bible verse here. Luke 9:62 says, but Jesus said to him, no one having put his hand to the plow, looking back, is fit for the kingdom. Let me say that one more time because some of y'all didn't get that yet. No one having put his hand to the plow and looking back. So, in other words, no one working and looking back. So, if I have my hand on the plow and looking back, what do you think I'm going to do? Even better example is if I'm driving and I'm looking in my rearview mirror, but I'm not focused forward, what am I going to do? Crash, right? The thing that is so interesting is so many of us don't realize we're not moving with intention. So many of us are busy being that watered down brand, and that was never God's intention for you. Stop looking at the resource and go to the source. All right. So, with that, step number 3 here, and again, it should say source, focus on God as a source. Sorry, not the resource. That's a typo. So, step 1 was realize God wants to partner with you. Step 2 is move with intention. And then 3, stop depending on what you can see. And see, Marie, you said this earlier, and I was like, oh, she's saying what I'm going to say in a minute. But listen, you were right on time. Listen, Moses and the children of Israel, talked about them a little while ago. They took 40 years to make an 11-day trip. They were focused on what they could see. Faith is when you are trusting no matter what. That's that commitment no matter what. I need you to get this. Matthew 6:24, and I talked about this in week 2. The episode was God Doesn't Care If You Buy Gucci. I talked about this Bible verse, so I'm not going to go in detail, but I got to read it here. Matthew 6:24 says, no one can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. So what master are you serving? Are you serving your money? Are you serving your job? Are you serving your mortgage? All those things are needed and necessary. I get that. But I serve the creator of all of those things. And as you do, God is the supplier. He supplies seed to the sower. And I said this in another episode. I think I had this Bible verse. Here it is. Matthew 2, excuse me, not Matthew. 2 Corinthians 9:10 says, now may he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food supply and multiply the seed you have sown and increase the fruits of your righteousness. Now, by the way, I encourage you guys, when I'm giving you these Bible verses, go back and read them and study them, because I'm going to tell you, they will bless your life, especially as an entrepreneur, because God created you to profit. But there are things that are in the way of your source giving you the resource you need. That's exactly what I'm doing this series. Mhm. James 1:6-8 says, but let him ask in faith with no doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double minded man, unstable in all his ways. Don't be double minded. Don't second guess your gift. Stop pimping your gift. Stop focusing on what you can see and understand that God is doing things. Listen, I often say that God is always working behind the scenes. Always. I feel like every time I've had a bad breakup, even though we're not talking about breakups, but this is real. I promise you, I felt like God had a man waiting in the wings, because it would be like the next day and be like, where did you come from? And this really happened in my relationship with my husband. I was like, if I'm gonna be honest with you, I was done with men. I said, okay, Lord, it's gonna be me and you. You're gonna be my husband. I'm complete. I'm gonna be single. I'm gonna do this thing you called me to do. And I met my husband the next day. And I know that happened only because I put all of my trust in God. Not what I could see, which was a really bad, public, humiliating breakup, if I'm gonna be honest, because my ex-boyfriend was a public figure. I don't get into that. But what I am going to say is God is always at work. Do we focus on yesterday or do we focus on tomorrow? Come on, children of Israel. Do we focus on where we were, what we can see, or do we focus on God, who is our supply? Another example of this is Abraham and Sarah. And I didn't write the Bible verse in here. I know this is in Genesis. But if you guys know the story of Abraham, that God told Abraham that he and Sarah, his wife, were going to have a baby in their old age. And I think Sarah was in her 80s and Abraham was in his hundreds or 90s or something like that. And so, because it was taking so long, what Sarah did was decide to take it up on herself and said, you know what? Maybe God intended for you to sleep with my handmaiden. Why don't you sleep with her and have a baby? See, she was dependent on what she could see. And so she started trying to figure stuff out. Oh, I could tell you the mistakes I made in my business, the mistakes I have made because I relied on what I thought I could see. Instead of stopping and getting on my knees and praying to the source to show me the resource to go after or show me the path that I should take. And the times I have done that, God has shown up and shown out in ways I could never ask or think. Thank you, C. Marie. Genesis chapter 16 is where Sarah and Abraham are, right? But I need you guys to get this. God oftentimes, I believe, puts us in places so we have to trust him, especially as you grow. I think the hardest thing is as we grow in our professional career, see, in your 20s is easy. We have no inhibition. We have no result in our life, and so it's easy for us to make these big, bold, risky moves. As you get a little more seasoned and you've got some track record under your belt, it makes it harder. See, I believe the children of Israel have gone through so much in Egypt that it was just hard for them to see how this promised land could even be possible. And they were relying on what they could see instead of who God is or was then and he still is now. James 1:17. Every good and perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. Mhm. See, God uses people. He uses our jobs. He uses money. He uses all those things to bless us. But we've got to always realize the source that it came from. Money's not the source, it's a resource. Your job is not the source, it's a resource. Your husband, your mate is not the source, it's a resource. Your house, not the source, resource. Matter of fact, every morning I wake up in this big house that I would have never, ever thought was possible. And even we don't have time for me to tell you the story of this house because I'm already about 30 minutes. And I try to be out for here in 30 minutes. But let me tell you guys something. When Well, let me tell the story real quick because I can't say that and not tell the story. So, those of you that haven't heard the story of my move. So, when COVID happened, I don't know if I've ever told this out loud. When COVID happened, I was here in the DMV area. I lived in Boston. Those of you that don't know, I'm from California. Met my husband. He got moved to Boston, moved to Boston. The rest is history. Okay. So I lived in Boston for 15 years. So, in Boston, and I just never felt connected to Boston. Met some great people in Boston, but it just never felt like home for me. And so I would come up here to the DMV all the time. And if I'm honest with you, I fell in love with DC in the eighth grade on my eighth grade field trip. So I've always felt like I should be here. So I remember I was here March of 2020. It was a week before COVID. And a woman came up to me and I was speaking at an event. Woman comes up to me and she says, Nicole, where do you live? And I said, Boston. And she goes, oh, I thought you were going to say somewhere up here. You're always here. And I said, well, I feel tied to the DMV. And she said, and I quote exactly, she said, maybe God is trying to prepare us so when you move here, we'll be ready for you. And I looked at her and she said, oh, I felt that. I said, so did I. So when I got home, I wrote it in my prayer journal. I said, God, I'm tired of feeling like this. If this is you, I need you to do something. Circled it. I took a picture of the DMV, put it in my prayer journal, circled it. That was March 2020. January 2021. Our our besties, our couple, best friend couple, told us they were moving from Boston. They were moving to Baltimore. And my husband was devastated. And my husband said, you don't seem devastated. And God said to me in that moment, show him. I showed him my journal. And he said, oh my goodness. He said, you know what? You've been here all this time for me. Maybe it's time for me to move for you. He said, I'm going to call my boss tomorrow. And if he says yes, it's done. Let me tell y'all something. When he called his boss the next day, his boss said, oh, we just bought a company in Sterling, Virginia. And we were trying to figure out what executive we were going to ask to move. So God had already set it all in motion. So I'm saying all that to say, so then Daryl says, well, what do we do with our house in LA? And God says, sell it. That little 1,300 square foot house in LA that I keep telling y'all that we redid sold for $1 million. Bought my million plus house here in Virginia. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that because the source did it all. So every morning I wake up in this house, I am thankful to God. I'm thankful that we were smart enough to put the resources into the house in LA. That was God too, because we thought we were going to retire in that house. So we built it up. We put a lot of money in that. We doubled that money and bought this house. So don't limit God's ability to bless you. There's no way this little black girl from South Central LA who grew up in a 2-bedroom house should have a 6-bedroom house, 7,000 square feet, but it's all God. And I'm not saying it to brag. I'm not. But had I focused on what I could see, which I never could have saw how we were going to move here. But God always has a bigger plan. So when you stop focusing on what you can see and focus on He, that will do abundantly above all you could ever ask or think. And then let him do it. Have the nerve to let him show up, show out, and do it. So, with that, let me end with this. Psalms 37:23. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way. Or I should say, the steps of a good woman are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in her way. So let God order your steps. Don't limit God's ability to bless you. Allow your journey to be and to live, was it to live and breathe and have his being in the way that God has ordained it for you and not how you think it should be. Don't be like Sarah, where you're trying to figure out how to make God's plan happen. God always has a plan. It's when we trust him that he can do things that we could never even imagine. So that's our conversation for this. Again, God wants you to profit, and I'm really helping you. And I hope this is helping you. By the way, please share in the comments because my goal here is to shift you so that you can get in alignment with the profit, not just to make more money. But listen, when you make more money, we're going to talk about this. I got two more episodes, 6-part series. This is part 4. So I'm going to talk about multiply. Trust me, I'm going to talk about making money. But I need you guys to get this. Me talking about that and me talking through strategy without you having the threshold to obtain it, the capacity, then it won't stick. So I need you to get that God is intentional. He is listen, he's a God of strategy. We're going to talk about this next week. But in order for you to be able to get in alignment with the Nordstrom brand of you and not the Walmart version, nothing wrong with Walmart, but I'm clear God didn't create any of us to be Walmart. Why be a Pinto when you could be a Bentley? I'm just saying. So with that, y'all, come on back. I'm so glad this is helping you, Regina. I appreciate you. If, by the way, any of this is valuable to you, please share. Please share. Again, I'm not asking you to share to grow my following, but I'm asking you to share because there are other people that need this insight. Number one. Number two, if you want to make sure you are notified when I go live every week, where you're watching, if you're here watching me on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to my channel. If you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, make sure you subscribe so that you get notified when I go live every Monday, 7 p.m. EST. All right. So, with that, it's my honor, my privilege. Again, if you've missed any part one, two, or three, if this is your first time, go back and watch the previous episodes so you can get caught up here and God Wants You to Profit. We got 2 more episodes to go. So I'll see y'all next Monday as we continue in the series God Wants You to Profit. Have a great rest of your Monday. Bye, y'all.